I'm sitting in a bank attorney's office and he's telling me I owe $550,000 on a mortgage I never signed. He slides documents across his desk: mortgage application, closing papers, promissory note. My signature is on every page. Co-signer for an $800,000 house purchased 18 months ago. I've never seen these documents before in my life. The attorney says the house is in foreclosure. 3 months of missed payments. The bank has already lost patience. They're coming after me for the remaining balance plus fees. Total amount due, $580,000. I'm 69 years old. I'm a retired teacher. I don't own any property except my paid-off home. I have never co-signed a mortgage for anyone, but my signature is right there on the documents. Notarized. Official. Legally binding. Then he tells me the primary borrower's name. Melissa Campbell. My niece. 18 months ago, I gave Melissa $250,000. She said she was opening a bakery. Showed me business plans, photos of equipment being installed, updates on the renovation progress. I was so proud of her. So excited to help her achieve her dream. There is no bakery. There never was. Melissa used my money as a down payment on an $800,000 house. Forged my signature on mortgage documents to qualify for the loan. The bank thought I was a willing co-signer using my good credit and pension income to help my niece buy a home. For 18 months, Melissa and her fiancé Travis lived in that house making minimal payments. Now they've stopped paying entirely. The bank is foreclosing. And they expect me to pay $550,000 I never borrowed for a house I've never seen. My sister Carol, Melissa's mother, is telling everyone in the family that I'm just getting old and forgetful. That I probably did sign the documents and don't remember. That I'm trying to ruin my niece's life because I regret helping her. If you've ever trusted family with money only to discover they were lying to you from the beginning, leave a comment. Subscribe if you believe that the people closest to you can sometimes be the most dangerous. Let me tell you how my niece stole $250,000 I gave her for a business, forged my signature on an $800,000 mortgage, and nearly destroyed my financial life. I'm 69 years old. Been a widow for 6 years. My husband Donald was an insurance executive who spent his entire career being careful with money. When he died, he left me with $800,000 in savings and investments, plus our home that was completely paid off. I was a teacher for 40 years. I have a modest pension that covers my living expenses comfortably. Between the pension and Donald's life insurance, I was financially secure. Not wealthy, but comfortable. Safe. I have one sister, Carol, who's 65. Her daughter Melissa is 32, my niece. Growing up, Melissa and I were close. I was the fun aunt who took her to museums and bought her art supplies and listened to all her big dreams. She was a creative, energetic kid who always had some new project or passion. As an adult, Melissa had trouble with follow-through. She'd worked as a waitress in retail, various temp jobs. Nothing ever stuck. She was engaged to Travis, who worked as a graphic designer and seemed responsible enough. Melissa was always talking about wanting her own business someday. Something creative where she could be her own boss. 2 years ago, Melissa started seriously talking about opening a bakery. She'd been taking baking classes at the community college. Showed me elaborate cakes she'd made. Said she wanted to specialize in custom wedding cakes and special occasion desserts. She came to my house with a business plan. A real one, typed and printed, with financial projections and market analysis. She'd scouted a location, a commercial space in the downtown area that would be perfect. She'd researched equipment costs, licensing requirements, insurance. It looked legitimate and well thought out. She said she needed $250,000. The breakdown was detailed: first month, last month, and security deposit on the commercial space. Commercial ovens and equipment. Initial inventory. Business licensing. Marketing. Working capital for the first 6 months before the bakery would be profitable. She asked me for a loan, not a gift. Said she'd pay me back with interest once the bakery was established. She promised monthly payments of $4,600 over 5 years. I talked to my financial advisor, who was skeptical. Said loaning that much money to family was risky. But I believed in Melissa. She'd put real work into this plan. And she was family. I had the money. If I couldn't help my niece achieve her dream, what was the point of having savings? I had my lawyer draw up a formal loan agreement. $250,000 loaned to Melissa Campbell for bakery business startup. 5-year repayment term at 4% interest. Both of us signed it. Everything was official and protected. I wrote the check. Melissa cried when I handed it to her. Said I was making her dream come true. That she'd never forget this. That she'd make me proud. For the first few months, Melissa sent regular updates. Photos of the commercial space being renovated. Photos of industrial ovens being installed. Pictures of logo designs and menu boards. I was so excited watching it all come together. So proud that I'd helped make this happen. She said the opening kept getting delayed. Permits took longer than expected. Inspection issues. Normal startup problems. I wasn't worried. Opening a business is complicated. These things take time. The first loan payment was due 6 months after I gave her the money. We'd built in a grace period for the startup phase. The payment never came. I called Melissa, who apologized profusely. Said the bakery expenses had been higher than projected and she needed a few more months to get cash flow established. Could I give her another 3 months? I agreed. Startups are hard. I didn't want to pressure her. Around month 8, I drove past the commercial space Melissa had mentioned as her location. I wanted to see how it looked, but the space was occupied by a completely different business, a law office that had clearly been there for years. I called Melissa confused. She said, "Oh, that location fell through at the last minute." She'd found a different space across town. The new location was perfect, even better than the first. Grand opening was coming soon. I never drove to the new location. I trusted her, believed the updates she was sending. Why would my niece lie to me? 18 months after I gave Melissa the money, I received a letter from a mortgage company. It was addressed to me at my home. The header said, "Notice of default and intent to foreclose." The letter referenced a property address I'd never heard of. Stated that I was co-signer on an $800,000 mortgage for that property. That 3 months of payments had been missed, totaling $24,000. That if the amount wasn't paid immediately, foreclosure proceedings would begin. I thought it was a scam. Identity theft. Some kind of mortgage fraud where someone had stolen my information. I called the mortgage company ready to explain this was a mistake. The woman on the phone pulled up my account, confirmed my social security number, birth date, address. Said I had co-signed a mortgage 18 months ago. That I'd appeared at closing and signed all documents. I told her I'd never bought a house, never co-signed anything, never been to any closing. She insisted their records were clear. Patricia Mitchell had co-signed a mortgage for Melissa Campbell to purchase an $800,000 home. If payments weren't made, they'd foreclose and pursue me for the remaining balance. I demanded they send me copies of every document with my name on it. When the envelope arrived 3 days later, my hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were dozens of pages. Mortgage application listing me as co-signer. Income verification using my pension and investment income. Credit report they'd pulled with my social security number. And on every signature line, my signature. Over and over. Witnessed by a notary. The closing date was 2 weeks after I'd given Melissa $250,000 for her bakery, and why money hadn't gone to a bakery. It had been the down payment on a house. And Melissa had forged my signature on mortgage documents to qualify for a loan I never knew existed. I called Melissa immediately. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. She answered on the 3rd ring, casual and cheerful like nothing was wrong. I asked her what the hell was going on with the mortgage in my name. There was a long silence. Then she said there must be some kind of confusion. That she'd used some of the loan money for a down payment on a house, and some for the business. That business and personal finances had gotten mixed up. I said, "You forged my signature on mortgage documents. You committed fraud." She got defensive. Said she thought I'd be okay with it since we're family. That she'd figured I wouldn't mind helping her get a house. That the bakery plan had evolved, and she'd made a business decision to invest in property instead. I told her I gave her $250,000 for a bakery business. Showed me a detailed business plan. Sent me photos of equipment and renovations. She said those were real photos, just not of her actual space. Said she'd borrowed images from a friend's bakery to show me the concept. I asked her what the address of her bakery was.
Right now.
Where is it? She gave me an address. I looked it up while still on the phone. The address didn't exist. She'd made it up on the spot. There is no bakery, I said. There never was a bakery. You lied to me from the beginning to steal my money. Melissa started crying. Said she was sorry, that she'd made mistakes, that she'd pay everything back. Then she hung up on me. I drove to the foreclosure address listed on the mortgage documents. Found an $800,000 house in a nice suburban neighborhood. Melissa and Travis's cars were in the driveway. They'd been living there for 18 months. Living in a house they could never afford on their own incomes, qualified for only because they'd used my credit and forged my signature, that I called my sister Carol. Expected her to be as horrified as I was. Instead, she was defensive. Said Melissa had mentioned I was helping them with a house. That I must have agreed to co-sign and forgotten about it. I said I never agreed to anything. Melissa forged my signature. Lied about a bakery. Stole my money. Carol's voice got cold. Said I was getting older, and maybe my memory wasn't what it used to be. That Melissa said I'd been supportive of the house purchase. That I was probably just confused. My own sister was suggesting I was senile rather than believing her daughter had committed fraud against me. I hired an attorney named Rebecca Walsh who specialized in fraud cases. She reviewed all the documents and said this was clearly fraud, but proving it would be difficult. The signatures looked close enough to mine. The notary seal made it appear legitimate. It would be my word against Melissa's. Rebecca ordered the mortgage closing documents. Found that the notary who'd stamped my signature was someone named Scott Chen. I'd never met anyone by that name. Never been to any closing. But his official notary seal was right there on the documents claiming I'd appeared before him and signed. Rebecca investigated Scott Chen. Found he was Travis's friend. Worked as a freelance notary doing mobile notarizations. She deposed him under oath, and he admitted the truth. He'd notarized my signature without me being present. Travis had told him I'd already signed the documents and just needed the notary stamp. Scott said he didn't think it was a big deal, just helping out a friend. That admission proved I'd never actually signed in front of a notary as required by law. It proved the entire closing was fraudulent, but the bank didn't care. They said they'd followed proper procedures. The documents appeared legitimate. They'd verified income and credit. Everything checked out because it was my real information being used. From their perspective, they'd made a legitimate loan, and now it was in default. Someone had to pay. The bank's foreclosure attorney called me. Said they'd foreclose on the house, sell it at auction, and pursue me for the remaining balance. The house was worth $800,000 when purchased, but the market had declined. They estimated it would sell for $680,000 at auction. That meant I'd still owe $120,000 plus foreclosure fees and late charges. Total, around $145,000. They offered a settlement. Pay them $100,000, and they'd write off the rest. Rebecca said it might be my best option. Fighting this in court could take years and cost tens of thousands in legal fees with no guarantee I'd win. I said, I'm not paying $100,000 for a mortgage I never signed. This is fraud. Rebecca filed a police report. The detective said they'd investigate, but financial crimes between family members were complicated. District attorneys were often reluctant to prosecute family disputes. It might not lead to criminal charges. Meanwhile, the foreclosure process moved forward. My credit score dropped 200 points. I had a foreclosure on my credit report. Banks froze my credit cards. At 69 years old, my previously perfect credit was destroyed. Rebecca hired a forensic document examiner to analyze the mortgage signatures. The expert found inconsistencies between my known signatures and the ones on the mortgage documents. Different pressure patterns, slightly different letter formations. But the expert said it wasn't conclusive enough for a criminal case. In civil court, it would be more likely than not that the signatures were forged. But for criminal charges, the standard was beyond reasonable doubt. Rebecca subpoenaed Melissa's phone records and bank statements. Found text messages between Melissa and Travis from 3 months before she asked me for the loan. One text from Melissa said, If we can get $250,000 from Aunt Patricia, we can buy a house. Travis replied, "How? She won't just give us house money." Melissa wrote back, "Tell her it's for a business. She'll believe anything." Another text from the day I wrote the check. She wrote the check. $250,000. We're getting our house. The text proved premeditation. Proved the bakery story was a lie from the beginning. Proved Melissa had targeted me specifically because I had money and would believe her. Rebecca showed me the loan agreement I'd so carefully had my lawyer draft. Said it was essentially worthless now. Melissa could claim the loan was for the house down payment, not a bakery. Or she could file bankruptcy and discharge the debt entirely. Either way, I'd likely never see that money again. The bank foreclosed on the house 6 months after I first received the default notice. Melissa and Travis stopped making payments entirely once they knew foreclosure was coming. They lived there rent-free for 6 months while the legal process ground forward. The house sold at auction for $680,000. The bank recovered most of their loan but still claimed I owed them $120,000 in shortfall plus fees. MY's sister Carol sided completely with Melissa. Started telling extended family that I was trying to ruin Melissa's life over a misunderstanding. That I'd agreed to help with the house and was now backing out. Some family members believed her. Others supported me. Our family fractured down the middle. I'd lost $250,000 to Melissa's fraud. Now the bank wanted another $120,000 from me. My life savings of $800,000 was being systematically destroyed by my niece's scheme, and everyone expected me to just accept it. Rebecca tracked down Scott Chen, the notary who'd stamped my signature without me being present. She deposed him under oath, and his testimony changed everything. Scott admitted he'd never met me. Travis had brought him the documents and said I'd already signed them but needed a notary seal. Scott said he was just doing a favor for his friend. Didn't think it was a big deal. That admission proved I'd never appeared before a notary as required by law. It proved the documents were fraudulent. Rebecca immediately filed a complaint with the Secretary of State. Notarizing without the signer present is illegal and grounds for license revocation. Scott's notary commission was suspended pending investigation, but Scott's admission, while helpful, didn't change the bank's position. They'd relied on documents that appeared legitimate. They'd verified my income and credit. From their perspective, they'd made a good faith loan and were now victims of fraud just like me. Rebecca obtained Melissa's complete phone records through subpoena. Found text messages between Melissa and Travis dating back more than 2 years. One exchange from 3 months before Melissa asked me for money was devastating. Melissa had texted Travis, "If we can get $250,000 from Aunt P, we can buy a house." Travis replied, "How? She won't just give us house money." Melissa's response, "Tell her it's for business. She'll believe anything." The text showed Melissa had researched mortgage qualification requirements months before approaching me. She knew she and Travis couldn't qualify for an $800,000 loan on their incomes alone. She needed a cosigner with good credit and verifiable income. She specifically targeted me because I had money, trusted her, and would want to help family. Another text from the day I wrote the check said, she wrote the check. $250,000. We're getting our house. Travis replied, "You're sure she doesn't know?" Melissa, she thinks it's for a bakery, LOL. The premeditation was clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding or confusion. Melissa had planned to defraud me from the beginning. Rebecca traced the source of the bakery photos Melissa had sent me. Found they came from a bakery in Portland, Oregon. I lived in Columbus, Ohio. The bakery owner confirmed she'd never met Melissa. The photos were from the bakery's public Facebook page. Melissa had downloaded them and sent them to me as evidence of her bakery being built. There had never been any equipment purchased. No business license applied for. No LLC formed. No commercial space rented. The entire bakery story was fabricated with almost no effort put into making it believable. Melissa had counted on my trust, not my scrutiny. Rebecca deposed my sister Carol. Under oath, Carol admitted Melissa had told her the money was for a house down payment, not a bakery. Carol knew. She'd known from the beginning that Melissa was lying to me about the business. Rebecca asked Carol directly, "Did Patricia ever tell you she agreed to co-sign a mortgage?" Carol said no. "Did Patricia ever mention helping Melissa buy a house?"
No.
"So, why did you believe Melissa's version of events?" Carol's answer was heartbreaking. "Because she's my daughter." My own sister had chosen to believe her daughter's lies over my word. Had helped spread the story that I was old and forgetful rather than admit Melissa had committed fraud. The district attorney finally decided to prosecute. Charged Melissa with forgery, fraud, and identity theft. Charged Travis as an accomplice for his role in the notary scheme. Charged Scott Chen with false notarization. Criminal trial was set for 8 months away. Meanwhile, the bank's attorney kept pressing for settlement. They offered to reduce the amount to $100,000 if I paid immediately. Rebecca said I should seriously consider it. Fighting could take years. Legal fees were already $40,000 and climbing. Even if I won, proving damages and collecting would be difficult. I refused. I wouldn't pay $100,000 for a debt I didn't create. This was fraud and I was the victim, not a deadbeat borrower. While I fought the bank, Melissa filed for bankruptcy. Chapter 7. Complete discharge of all her debts, including the $250,000 loan I'd given her. The loan agreement my lawyer had carefully drafted was now worthless. Melissa had legally eliminated her obligation to repay me while I was still being pursued by the bank for the mortgage. The unfairness was staggering. Melissa got to walk away from her debts while I faced financial ruin for fraud committed against me. Rebecca filed a civil lawsuit against Melissa, Travis, and Carol. Sued for the $250,000 loan, the $100,000 settlement I'd have to pay the bank, and legal fees. Total, $390,000. She said even if we won, collecting from bankrupt defendants would be nearly impossible. But we needed the judgment on record. The emotional toll was destroying me. I wasn't sleeping. Lost 15 pounds from stress. My doctor prescribed anxiety medication. Some friends rallied around me, but others believed Carol's version, that there must be more to the story, that family disputes are always complicated, that maybe I had agreed to something and didn't remember clearly. My reputation in the community was affected. I'd been a respected teacher for 40 years. Now people whispered about the family drama, about whether I was really as sharp as I seemed at my age. The bank's position remained firm. They'd done their due diligence. Everything had checked out because my real information was used. They were willing to settle for $100,000 but wouldn't go lower. If I didn't settle, they'd pursue the full $145,000 through collections and lawsuits. Rebecca laid out my options. Option 1. Settle with bank for $100,000. Sue Melissa and Travis in civil court. Hope to recover something eventually. Total immediate loss. $250,000 loan plus $100,000 settlement plus $40,000 legal fees equals $390,000. Option 2. Fight the bank in court. Argue I was fraud victim and shouldn't be liable. Could take 2 to 3 years. Legal fees could reach $70,000 or more. Outcome uncertain. Even if I won against bank, I'd still be out the $250,000 I'd given Melissa plus massive legal fees. Option 3. Declare bankruptcy myself. Would eliminate the mortgage debt, but destroy what remained of my credit and financial reputation. At 69, bankruptcy would follow me the rest of my life. None of the options were good. Every path led to massive financial loss. The money Donald and I had saved over 40 years of careful living was being drained away by my niece's fraud, and I had no way to stop it. The criminal trial began 8 months after the district attorney filed charges. Melissa and Travis sat at the defense table with their attorneys. Melissa wore a conservative dress and had styled her hair to look younger, more innocent. Travis in a suit, looking uncomfortable. Both pleaded not guilty. The prosecutor presented the case methodically. Started with the text messages, showing premeditation. Messages from months before Melissa asked me for money. If we can get $250,000 from Aunt P, we can buy a house. Tell her it's for business. She'll believe anything. The jury could see this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated scheme. Then the prosecutor showed the loan agreement I'd signed with Melissa. Clear language. $250,000 for bakery business startup. Showed the check I'd written. Showed Melissa's bank records proving she'd deposited it. Next came the mortgage documents. Showed the house purchase happened 2 weeks after I wrote the check. Showed my supposed signatures on mortgage application, closing documents, promissory note. Showed the $250,000 down payment came directly from the money I'd given Melissa. The prosecutor presented the fake bakery photos Melissa had sent me. Photos she downloaded from a Portland bakery's Facebook page and claimed were her business. Showed there was no business license, no LLC, no commercial space rented. No bakery had ever existed. Scott Chin testified first. The notary had been granted immunity in exchange for his testimony. He admitted he'd notarized my signature without me ever appearing before him. Said Travis had brought in the documents and told him I'd already signed. Scott knew it was wrong, but did it as a favor to his friend. His testimony proved I'd never been to the closing, never signed in front of a notary as required. The handwriting expert testified next. Showed side-by-side comparisons of my known signatures versus the mortgage signatures. Pointed to differences in pressure, stroke angle, letter formation. Said in her expert opinion, the signatures were more likely than not forgeries. Someone had attempted to copy my signature, but the subtle differences were visible under analysis. Then I took the stand. The prosecutor walked me through the entire story. How Melissa came to me with a business plan for a bakery. How I'd believed her, wanted to help her achieve her dream. How I'd had a lawyer draft a formal loan agreement. How I'd written a check for $250,000 thinking I was helping family. I testified about the updates Melissa sent. The photos of equipment, the renovation progress, the delays with permits. How I'd believed it all. How I'd driven past the supposed bakery location and found it didn't exist. How Melissa had claimed the location had changed. I explained receiving the foreclosure notice 18 months later. The shock of discovering I was listed as co-signer on a mortgage I'd never seen. Finding out my money had been used for a house down payment instead of a business. Learning my signature had been forged on mortgage documents. Melissa's defense attorney cross-examined me. Asked if I'd ever discussed Melissa buying a house. I said never. Asked if I'd ever agreed verbally to help with a house purchase. I said absolutely not. Asked if it was possible I'd forgotten signing documents. I said no. I would remember signing a mortgage for $800,000. He tried to suggest my memory wasn't reliable at my age. The prosecutor objected. The judge sustained. My testimony stood. Melissa took the stand in her own defense. She testified that she'd thought I understood the money was for a house. That she'd mentioned wanting to buy property and I'd been supportive. That she believed I'd agreed to co-sign and that I'd just forgotten due to my age. She claimed the bakery plan had evolved into a house purchase and that I'd been fine with it. Said the business and personal finances had gotten confused, but there was no intent to deceive. The prosecutor's cross-examination destroyed her. He showed her the text again. She thinks it's for a bakery, LOL. Asked her to explain that text if I'd known about the house. Melissa said it was taken out of context. He showed the fake bakery photos. Asked why she'd sent me photos of a bakery in Oregon if I'd known she was buying a house. Melissa said she was showing me concepts for a future bakery. Her answers didn't make sense. He asked why she'd told Travis she'll believe anything if this was all above board. Melissa had no good answer. Travis testified that he'd thought I really had co-signed. That Melissa had handled all the paperwork. But the prosecutor showed texts between them discussing the scheme. One text where Travis asked, "Your aunt really doesn't know about the house?" And Melissa replied, "Nope. She thinks bakery." Travis had known. He'd been part of it from the beginning. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. When they returned, the verdicts were read. Melissa, guilty of forgery, guilty of fraud, guilty of identity theft. Travis, guilty of conspiracy to commit fraud, guilty of aiding and abetting forgery. Melissa started crying. Travis put his head in his hands. My sister Carol, sitting in the gallery, sobbed loudly. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge was harsh. Said this was a betrayal of family trust, a calculated fraud against an elderly woman, and a serious crime that deserved serious consequences. Melissa got 3 years in prison and 5 years probation. Ordered to pay restitution of $390,000. The loan, the settlement I'd have to pay the bank, and my legal fees. Travis got 18 months in prison and 3 years probation. Also ordered to pay $390,000 in restitution jointly with Melissa. Scott Chen, tried separately, got 1 year in prison for false notarization. His notary license was permanently revoked. As they read Melissa's sentence, Carol turned to look at me. She was crying. Tried to say something. I turned away. Couldn't look at her. My sister had chosen her daughter's lies over the truth, and I had nothing to say to her. After the criminal convictions, my civil lawsuit proceeded quickly. Melissa and Travis had no defense after being found guilty in criminal court. The judge ruled in my favor. $390,000 judgment against them jointly. Also ruled Carol owed $50,000 for her knowing participation in covering up the fraud. None of them had assets. The judgment was essentially worthless. Travis was garnished $200 a month from whatever jobs he could get. At that rate, I'd collect maybe $50,000 over 20 years. The rest I'd never see. After Melissa's conviction, I went back to the bank with Rebecca. We renegotiated the settlement. The bank's attorneys recognized their verification failures. They'd never contacted me directly during the mortgage process, never required me to appear at closing in person. They didn't want the publicity about how easily the fraud had occurred. They agreed to settle for $50,000 instead of $100,000. I paid it. The mortgage debt was eliminated. My credit report was corrected to show I was a fraud victim, not a deadbeat borrower. But the financial damage was done. I'd lost $250,000 to Melissa's fraud. Paid $50,000 to settle the mortgage. Spent $45,000 on legal fees. Total loss, $345,000. Almost half of the $800,000 Donald and I had carefully saved over 40 years that I had $455,000 left. At 69 years old with no ability to rebuild my savings, my financial security for retirement was permanently reduced. Melissa went to prison. Travis went to prison. Scott lost his career. Carol lost her relationship with me. And I lost nearly half my life savings to a niece I'd trusted and loved. 3 years after Melissa went to prison, I'm 72 years old and living with the permanent consequences of her fraud. I still live in my paid-off home, but my savings of $455,000 are significantly less than the $800,000 I'd carefully accumulated over 40 years of teaching and Donald's careful financial planning. Melissa completed her 3-year sentence and was released last month. I heard through extended family that she moved to Colorado with Travis after he finished his sentence. They're divorced now. The fraud scheme that brought them together destroyed their marriage. Melissa's restitution payments come sporadically. Maybe $100 every few months when she finds work. At that rate, I'll never recover even a fraction of what I lost. My sister Carol never apologized. We haven't spoken since the trial. Carol maintains that I overreacted, that sending Melissa to prison was cruel. The rest of the family is split. Some cousins support me completely. Others think I should have worked it out within the family instead of pressing criminal charges. I made peace with the division. I chose justice over family approval. The loan agreement I'd carefully had my lawyer draft turned out to be worthless. Melissa filed bankruptcy and discharged that debt. The criminal restitution judgment exists on paper, but collecting from someone with no assets is impossible. I volunteer now with a nonprofit that helps fraud victims, particularly elderly people targeted by family members. I speak at senior centers about financial exploitation. Warn others never to co-sign anything without fully understanding the documents. Never to loan large amounts to family without rock-solid protections. I've helped 3 other women who discovered adult children or nieces had forged their signatures on loans or mortgages. My financial advisor had warned me about loaning that much money to family. I wish I'd listened, but I'd wanted to believe in Melissa. Wanted to help her achieve her dreams. That generosity cost me $345,000 and nearly destroyed my retirement security that I date occasionally. Met a retired accountant through church who's kind and has no interest in my money. But I'm cautious about relationships now in ways I never was before. Melissa's betrayal made me suspicious of people's motives, My remaining $455,000 is carefully invested to generate income that supplements my pension. I live comfortably, but not lavishly. No more helping family members with large sums. That generosity cost too much. The bakery Melissa claimed to be opening never existed. Ironically, I took a baking class myself last year and discovered I enjoy it. I bake for church functions now. There's bitter irony in the fact that the fake bakery that destroyed my finances led me to discover I actually like baking. I keep the loan agreement in a file folder labeled "Expensive Lessons." Look at it sometimes when I need to remind myself that even careful planning can't protect you from someone determined to deceive you. That family relationships don't guarantee honesty. That trust, once broken, can never be fully restored. Melissa will be on probation for 2 more years. I have a restraining order preventing contact. She works at a restaurant in Colorado, lives in a small apartment, struggles financially. Part of me feels satisfaction at that. Part of me just feels sad that my bright, creative niece chose fraud over integrity and destroyed both our lives in the process. The house she bought with my money sold at foreclosure for $680,000. New owners have no idea of the fraud history. Melissa and Travis got nothing from the sale. That $800,000 house that was supposed to be their dream home became their prison sentence. I'm 72 now. My savings will last my lifetime if I'm careful. I won't have the comfortable retirement Donald and I planned, but I'll be okay. I survived Melissa's fraud. I fought back. I got justice even though I didn't get my money back. Some days that feels like enough. Other days I look at my bank balance and feel the weight of what was stolen. $345,000 I'll never get back. Trust I'll never fully regain. A family relationship destroyed beyond repair, but I'm still here. Still independent. Still in my home. Melissa tried to take everything from me and failed. That's the victory I hold on to.